So, disclaimer first. If you're watching this looking for some violin expert, not this guy. I have had in the back of my head for a good chunk of my life that I wanted to play the violin, but I never did. I started violin about 9.5 months ago. And when I first started, it was just after Christmas, and I got a violin kind of on the whim gift. And it's a no-name brand, Amazon violin that, if you're just testing the waters, is probably a good bet. What I found out, though, is that I really love the violin, which is kind of crazy. Never expected it in a million years, but here I am. I practice pretty much every day. Depending on the day, there's days where I will practice, an hour, but generally I'm putting in probably a couple of hours at least. I read that HiFit said that you shouldn't practice more than 3 hours a day, so I try to compress things. Not that I'm a HiFit by any stretch. As to why I love playing violin, well, if you're watching this and you play violin, you probably have that all figured out already. I wish that I had started as a kid, but I think that playing violin as an adult is a pretty cool thing. I'm looking forward to seeing how good this gets, because in a year I've gone from sounding like I'm strangling a cat to actually playing songs, which is very cool. I'm actually now starting to think about, what violin I want to move to. Not that there's anything wrong with the cheapo Amazon violin, but I think that as you progress, you have to get a violin that sounds more like a violin should, and that you're not fighting with as much. At least that's what I've come to find. In terms of what I practice, it's changed a lot. As you can imagine, starting the violin just before the plague of COVID hit was not necessarily the most ideal thing, though in retrospect it actually wasn't so bad, because it forced me to take responsibility for me and what I am going to get out of playing the violin. Here in Canada, during the lockdown, we couldn't really get one-on-one lessons, and since then, a lot of people have been going to online stuff, and I've found that there's already a lot of online material out there. Really great site that I've used a lot is called Fiddlehead, with an H-E-D. Jason Kleinberg, really great violinist and a really good instructor. I've used an app as well called Trala, and I think that's been great. And more than anything, I've just really every day done some, apart from practicing, I've done a lot of research and development in terms of looking into everything I can on the violin, whether it is how they're made, the little things that go into them, the history of them, all the greats that have played this amazing instrument, and try to figure out how I fit in there. And I think that's an important process, because we all have to fit in somehow. And you might think yourself a complete newbie to it like I do, but I practice every day, and I think if you practice your instrument every day, that makes you a musician of some sort. And it's kind of exciting to see the growth that you get when you're dedicated to doing it. What I would say is make sure that you practice every day, set yourself aside the time if you have to, and just let what happens happens. Don't judge too much, and just have fun, because end of the day, it's a fun thing. At least it is as an adult. If I was a kid and my parents were forcing me to do it, it probably wouldn't be quite the same. But this is something that I want to do, and I think that's pretty awesome. in terms of what I practice every day, I think in future videos we'll go over some of that. For this video though, I just wanted to introduce myself a bit and let you know what I'm doing. So with the pandemic and practicing, I think that it has opened the door to the technology that we have available. So we can use online learning in a way that I don't think we ever really pursued. There's a lot of instructors who are teaching mainly online, and I know that before COVID, online learning didn't have the same kind of credibility, I think, as it does now, which is kind of silly because it allows you to really focus on what you're working on, what you're doing, answer those questions that you are having, whatever they are. And I've found that, whether it was with the Trala app or, different online websites and YouTube videos, and like I said, the Fiddlehead, it's allowed me to grow in a whole lot of different ways and appreciate a whole lot of different kinds of music that before I don't think I ever really paid much attention to. I mean, I knew that there was something called klezmer music. I never really dove into it like I have since I started playing the violin. I definitely didn't know about some of these greats of the violin, like Heifetz, for instance. I'd heard of Itzhak Perlman. I don't know that I appreciated him as much as I do now. He's kind of become my violin hero in a lot of ways. Amazing violinist. I hope when all this COVID is done, I hope I get to, listen to him in person someday. Because an amazing man, amazing story, and an inspirational violinist, really. And so, Itzhak, thumbs up to you, because you're inspiring a whole bunch of people to play violin. That's not a terrible thing to do in your life. When I'm practicing, I generally spend almost an hour now working on what I call fundamentals. So things like working on my scales or working on my double stops. I'm just recently started working on exercises so that eventually I can get vibrato. I'm not really doing vibrato yet. I'm just doing exercises. And I do things like that. And I work on bowing patterns, different exercises I picked up to loosen up your wrist as you're bowing a bit, and things like that. Like I said, we'll go over that in another video. More than anything, I just wanted to kind of introduce myself in this strange COVID-19 violin world that I'm living in, which, well, I think when all's said and done, when we get to the other side of it, I'm going to be quite grateful that I had this time. During the lockdown, I was playing my violin a good chunk of the day, and I think in a lot of ways it kept me sane because it was a pretty insane time. It still is pretty insane times. We're entering into, we're in fall and entering to winter, and all around the world, this virus is really exploding everywhere now. So we'll see what the future holds. All I know is I'm gonna be getting better on my violin every day because that's what I'm gonna do, and I keep practicing. So I think that's where we'll end this video. In the next video, I think we're gonna go over some of the things that I've been practicing and that have been working for me. And I've been doing a lot of trial and error. When I can't remember if I mentioned this, when I first started playing violin, I was playing around with mainly that Trala app, and then I had maybe it was 2 months, maybe not even that, of an actual violin teacher, and then the plague hit, And then I went totally to using Trala and online resources. And then, like I said, found Fiddlehead, and that's really helped fill some gaps in for me. He's a great teacher. If you haven't checked out Fiddlehead, make sure you go over there and check that out. And the same with the Trala app. Trala is pretty cool too. It's a lot of fun. It's like playing a game and a violin at the same time. And with that, I think we're going to end it. So if you were just watching this and thinking about playing violin, good Lord, get yourself a violin, get started. For those of you that are likely far better than me, well, you can look back on what I'm doing and remember those days. And if you're in the same boat as me and, trying to sail the sea of newbie violin in these weird days that we've found ourselves in, well, you're not alone, and just keep practicing. I'll talk to you later.